Israel is the only regime in the Middle East with hundreds of nuclear warheads, and now its Prime Minister has told the United Nations General Assembly session that Iran must dismantle its nuclear program altogether.
But history has taught us that to prevent war tomorrow, we must be firm today. Now, this raises the question: can diplomacy stop this threat? Well, the only diplomatic solution that would work is one that fully dismantles Iran's nuclear weapons program and prevents it from having one in the future. President Obama rightly said that
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu told the 68th session of the General Assembly in New York that Iran is trying to obtain nuclear weapons. Netanyahu also threatened that Israel will not allow Iran to get nuclear weapons, and if forced, Tel Aviv is ready to act alone against Iran. Netanyahu's salvo of threats and accusations against Iran comes as Tehran has repeatedly insisted that its nuclear energy program is for peaceful purposes only. Reports by the International Atomic Energy Agency, or the IAEA, have also shown that Iran has not deviated toward a military nuclear program. Meanwhile, a relevant response: Iran's deputy ambassador to the UN accuses Israel of inflammatory remarks and saber-rattling, while Tel Aviv's the only regime that possesses all types of weapons of mass destruction, including nukes, in the Middle East. Khodadad Saifi has also warned Netanyahu against any miscalculation by planning to attack Iran.
He also continued saber-rattling toward Iran by abusing this August Assembly for threatening a founding member of this organization, which is first and foremost established for the prevention and removal of the threats to the peace. He talked a lot about WMDs in the Middle East without mentioning that Israel is the only one in the region that possesses all types of WMDs, but is not a party to any of the treaties banning them. He should seriously avoid miscalculation about Iran. Therefore, the Israeli Prime Minister had better not even think about attacking Iran, let alone planning for that. In conclusion, Mr. Chairman,
Iran's representative at the UN General Assembly criticized Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu minutes after his speech. Saifi asked Netanyahu to review Iran's history of commitment to its international obligations, in contrast to Tel Aviv's defiance of all relevant international treaties and regulations. The Iranian diplomat also accused Israel of committing crimes in its wars against Palestinians and its other neighboring and even non-neighboring nations. Well, let's cross over to California now. Joining us from via Skype is Alison Weir, the executive director of If Americans Do. Many thanks for joining us here on Press TV, ma'am. Now, report after report by the IAEA shows that Iran has not deviated toward a military nuclear program, and yet Netanyahu comes, and as the Iranian representative put it, there was a lot of saber rattling and a lot of threats. What do you make of that?
Well, there certainly was. This is typical of Mr. Netanyahu and of the Israeli government in general. They consistently want to get the world, and especially my country, the United States, to attack Iran, to damage Iran financially and economically. This is part of that pattern. And Mr. Netanyahu is really throwing stones in a very glass house. Even the BBC suggests that Israel has about 400 nuclear warheads. So that is the danger to the world, the fact that Israel has so many nuclear weapons. While at the same time, even the U.S. intelligence agencies consistently tell us that they have found no evidence that Iran is developing nuclear weapons.
Now, as Iran does give a response to these words by Netanyahu, saying, warning Netanyahu against any miscalculation by planning to attack Iran, how far do you think this is going to go, in the sense that, do you think Israel is isolated in its position with regards to Iran, specifically in the recent events?
Well, it's isolated except for the United States. The Israel lobby here is still very powerful. The media are largely dominated by Israeli-centric reporting, to put it mildly. So Israel's not entirely isolated. It does have the United States possibly in its corner, although the majority of Americans are truthfully very tired of these wars that Israel pushes us into in the Middle East. And the fact that Israel wants us to attack Iran, they wanted us to go after Syria. They did succeed in getting us to attack Iraq, which has been a huge quagmire and tragedy for people in the region, also for Americans. So the really unknown here is what the United States will do. And the problem is that Americans are largely being misinformed on the issue of Israel. So it's a little bit difficult to say what will happen.
Well, speaking of which, Iran has said that it is willing to come to the negotiating table and show flexibility. However, its right towards peaceful nuclear technology must be recognized. And then there is the U.S., as you've said, it's dominated by Israeli lobbies. How do you think it's going to fare from here as we wait and see if a resolution can be hammered out?
Well, as I said, I think Americans are starting to wake up to the power of this lobby. Most people still, for many years, were not very aware of it. To most people, Israel seemed far away and confusing. They knew very little about Palestinians. But now, because of the internet and because more people have gone to the region and are looking into this, and we have now alternative sources of information, the American public is a little bit more informed, and we see, I believe, that the Iranian leaders have made strong, very rational, very logical statements about the situation. Certainly the fact that Iran is a party to the non-proliferation treaty is a very positive reality, whereas Israel has not signed that treaty and has been in violation of even U.S. laws in the way it has used chemical weapons in the past and cluster bombs. So Israel has a very poor record, and I don't think would have the support of the American public if Americans knew more about what's going on there.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. That was Alison Weir, the Executive Director of If Americans Knew, joining us from California via Skype. Ms. Weir, thank you very much for your comments here on Press TV.